little bit of an overview of the current use and what we're continuing to propose as the use going forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'd just like to make a statement real quick, unrelated to this application. We did go down on YouTube for a moment. It seems like we were off air for about 9 minutes. I just restarted it, and we should be good moving forward.
Okay. Are there any, Christy, is there anything different of ongoing, or it's all the same hours, the same operation, the same number of students, whatever, same number of everything?
Yes, it's consistent with what was originally presented to the board and approved at that time. And the reality is that that's because it's the business design of the school. You know, they operate with small class sizes in mind because they want to cater to their individual students. And that's what makes it so popular and people want to keep coming back.
Anybody else on the board have any questions? I don't have any. No. Does anybody from the public wish to address this application? Greg, is there anybody signing? Nope.
Nope.
Okay, somebody want to make, unless we have, somebody has a reason not to, does somebody want to make a motion to close?
Chair, could I just make, I apologize, could I just make one more statement before you close? As with the prior applicant, we would just ask that the board consider making the new special permit an unlimited period of time. As I indicated, there's a 20-year lease on the property and the use is continuing in its current format. So just for the board's consideration. And thank you again for your time this evening.
All right, thank you. Doug, were you making a motion?
Yes, to close.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Abby,
Yes.
Greta.
Close.
Yes.
Greta?
Yes.
Okay. I vote yes. Meg
Yes.
and Doug.
Absolutely.
All right, so this is closed also.
Thank you for your time. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. All right, the next application is application 8SP 2020, 9SP and 9A 2020 for Jean Lum for Lemon Hung Realty, 100 West Boston Post Road.
Okay, I gotta find, all right.
Okay,
Ed, you should be able to speak now.
okay. My name is Ted Demore. I'm the architect for the applicant, Jean Lum. And I have the application before you. I have on my screen some photographs and some plans.
So
If
just
you're
click
familiar
the
with the
share
property.
screen. It's in the middle at the bottom,
All right, I see it.
and then click share. There'll be a second
Is
here
that,
comes up.
wait, before we go there, is that Eugene Lum?
That is me.
Yes,
Yes. I think you went, Madam Chair,
Yes,
I just have to disclose that Eugene and my youngest son were friends. And I just wanted to disclose that. It won't impact my determination whatsoever, but I felt I needed to close that. I needed to note that.
all right, thank you. Okay, go ahead, please continue, Mr. Demore.
okay. This is the subject building. It's on West Boston Post Road on the corner of Mamaroneck Avenue. It's right alongside this building. This building over here is the subject building, and we're on the corner. In the neighborhood, this is a picture of the back of the lot. This is the back of the roof. This is the corner of the building, and this is the other building next door. Just to give you an idea, we're across the street from the Harbor Island Park. We're in a mixed-use neighborhood, but you all know the neighborhood we are in Mamaroneck, so if you want me to dispense with the photos, I can get into the nature of the application. Mr. Lum's family has operated a restaurant here from 1971, and to describe the property, they were there for until 2018, when they left that restaurant. They leased it since then. So this property has had a very long history as a restaurant. They need a special permit to operate not a real they want to expand the restaurant, but they want to make a restaurant that will be a kind of a commissary that distributes prepared foods to other restaurants in the neighborhood. The lessee is Abe Abdallah, that has 2 restaurants in the neighborhood. One of them is Avenue Bagel Cafe and Hasho Nash, just up the street. So they would be leasing the restaurant, and we have a architectural plan that shows how much of the space would be used for a kitchen. Let me go to the floor plan and give you an idea of what it is we propose. Right now, the proposed use of the restaurant is the plan that's on top, and you can see it's mostly a restaurant. The only customer area we have is for takeout at the front of the building here, and the rest is for cooking and employee use. And the present restaurant uses a much bigger area for its restaurant and has a small area for the kitchen. So the special permits and the zoning variants are about using a building for manufacturing, and we call it manufacturing, although it's only cooking, but it's for use of a product that's sold off-site, not just on-site. And the zoning allows you to have only 20% of your floor area devoted to preparing things or used off-site. And in our case, we have a larger area. We have 75%. And so the zoning issues are that we need the special permit to operate the restaurant, because it's still a restaurant. We're going to have a lot of takeout. Special permit is to manufacture in the C2 zone, and the variance is to manufacture in the C2 zone. And we need this variance because we have been unable to attract another restaurant to go into this space. It's been since 2018, only one restaurant has gone in, and they have not been able to make a go of it. They only lasted 8 months, and the building has been vacant since they left, and it was vacant all the last year. So it's been a tremendous financial strain on Eugene Lum and his family. So what we would like to look at is, well, I want to let you know that he's had the project out to realtors who have been searching for other tenants of this space that would put in any of the approved uses that are allowed in a C2 zone, and have just been unable to locate anyone that wants to rent this except for Mr. Abdallah, who is interested in putting this kitchen here and having a different kind of a restaurant. So we are looking at what kind of variances we would want, and it's only about the increase in the amount of area we're using and the variance to manufacture. So the questions before you are whether or not this would be a change in the character of the neighborhood. And we submit that this is just an interior alteration and would not change the character of the neighborhood. There's no proposed change to the facade or increase in parking. Instead, there'll be little change to the traffic There'll be trucks delivering food as they would to any restaurant and vans picking up prepared foods to take to restaurants being served from this location. Second item is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than a variance. And all we can say is that the applicant, Mr. Gene, has been trying for over a year and has had no success with this tenant to find, no success with this property to find another tenant. And this is the only viable business that has appeared that is interested in taking this space. And because it's already set up for cooking, the kitchen range hood, it's an excellent fit for the new tenant. And whether this is a substantial variance, and we think it's a minimal variance because it's only related to the interior space of the cooking and not related to anything else. And lastly, whether this difficulty is, I'm sorry, not second to last, whether this will have an adverse effect on the physical impact or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. And because it's a restaurant, remains a restaurant, has no change to the parking, that it won't have an adverse effect on the neighborhood. And whether this was a self-created hardship, and the thing we can tell you about being self-created is that the Lum family had this property since the 70s. They left this business. They couldn't operate anymore. They retired. Gene's parents retired, and they have not been able to rent it to anyone else. So it's a financial hardship, and he's not able to make a reasonable return on his investment in the community, and he'd like to see his building filled up. And prepared to answer any questions you have about the operation. But I think those are the major points of the case.
I have a couple of questions. How many people are going to be working in the restaurant?
No
Or
more
let
than
me
10
rephrase that. How many people are going to be working in this space?
in the space. No more than 10.
Okay, are you going to have more than 5 people engaged in the manufacturing part?
No,
So you're going to have 5 people engaged in manufacturing and 5 people working for this small takeout place?
well, let me see if Abe is on the line. Maybe he can answer that question. Abe, are you there?
I don't see him on. Oh
He
yeah,
is not
actually
there.
he is. He is that series of numbers. Hold on.
Hello?
Yep, you should be able to speak now.
Hello, everybody. How you doing, guys? Okay, basically, would not
Could
like.
you wait, excuse me, identify yourself, please, because
Oh,
nobody
I'm
can.
sorry. Abe Abdullah, the owner of Operation Cousins, DBA Operation Falafel.
Okay,
Okay, so it's really not manufacturing food. We are just preparing food. So it's not a lot of cooking happening. It's more preparation. I'm sure you're all familiar with shawarma, falafel, hummus, and salads. Basically, that's what we've been doing in the back to supply my front store and my other location on the avenue. And regarding trucks, the truck's gonna be coming through the back, the back parking lot, which has 12 parking spots, all dedicated to me. So that's when gonna be the pickup and drop off and everything there. Employees wise, we're probably gonna have, between 10 to 15, give or take. That's basically it.
okay. The zoning code says no more than 5 persons may be engaged at any one time in such manufacturing or processing. So if you're going to have more than 5 people, which I guess you are, you're going to need a variance from that requirement too.
Well, we're not gonna have more than 5 people in the back. Or don't forget, we're gonna open the restaurant, so it's gonna be double shift.
So how many people are you going to have working in the restaurant portion, which is a takeout portion only?
I will say about 5 to 6, give or take. It could be more, could be less. Nobody know what the economy is holding for us these days.
And how many people are going to be working in the back part of it?
4 or 5. Because as
And
I said,
so, oh, sorry.
all preparation. We're not like cooking wise, it'd probably be 2 hours a day in the morning, just cooking hummus. Everything which is chickpeas.
And
Besides
so
that,
the purpose of the cooking is just to supply your food truck?
not trucks, restaurants.
So they're gonna do cooking here and you're gonna take this with a truck to the other restaurants that you own in other locations?
Yes.
So it's really like a ghost kitchen.
Basically what we call dark kitchen, yes.
Will you be selling to other food establishments as well as your own food establishments?
No, just my own.
So, and you're only gonna be cooking 2 hours a day, is that all?
No, cooking wise, I'm talking about the smell. Gonna be about 2 hours a day. The rest of the day is gonna be just preparation, like shawarma. You know what I mean? We slice it, marinate it, put it on a skewer. There's no cooking involved, all preparation.
So you make the food early in the morning, and then you have it for the rest of the day to,
Supply it to other locations.
so how many trucks are you gonna have coming by? And when are they coming by?
Oh, no, how many trucks? It'd be delivery truck, which is sometimes 2 times a week, 3 times a week, give or take half an hour each delivery. Then picking up will be once a day to twice a day the most, for like maybe 20 minutes each time. And time wise, it'll be early in the morning. I would say about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And they're not huge trucks, my delivery. It's a van. So it's not like gonna make a lot of noise.
Frank, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I have a question on exhaust, and I don't know that there's any difference between the exhaust from this type of kitchen operation versus if it were fully a restaurant. Would there be, or is it the same type of exhaust operation?
It is the same type of exhaust. The prior restaurant had a pizza oven that they put an additional stack that came out of that roof, which I assume is going to come out when they, convert this to the new place. But the rest of the exhaust is the same in the kitchen part.
Except now, so when is it that you're going to be doing this exhausting? And the cooking?
Basically in the morning.
But when in the morning? Are we talking 5 a.m., 9 a.m.?
Yeah, 9, 10 a.m., things like that.
Will someone who's coming to be picking up from the takeout also be able to use the rear parking lot?
Yes, they could. Since I have all the parking for myself, 12 cars. So yeah, they want to park and pick up the food. It's doable for them.
Are you parking those trucks in the parking? In other words, the pickup truck comes every day at, let's say, 1 o'clock, whatever time it comes, and it
Yes.
picks up the food. But where is it between the hours when is it parking permanently in that parking lot?
Yes,
And you just have one of them?
just we're gonna have one, yes.
Did
They
you
are
do
in the
zoning
C, they are in the
calculation?
C2 district.
I'm sorry?
They're in the C2 district in terms of parking. We don't normally, we usually think that the municipal lots are available.
I didn't hear you, Meg.
I was saying that it's located in the C2 district.
Yes.
Traditionally, we haven't looked at parking as we believe that they have access to the large municipal lots, so we haven't put parking requirements on restaurants in the C2. Robin, can you tell me where the code is about the 5 people in the manufacturing? I've read something about the light
Oh,
manufacturing.
Sure, 34247.
Thanks.
I'm just gonna grab my book. I'll be right back.
Another quick update on the stream. It went down on cable, and they're telling me that it should be up now on cable as well. So everyone knows.
Someone doesn't want us to be. Something.
I'm back.
Okay. Then, yeah, go ahead, Meg.
It would seem, I understand light manufacturing is involved, and we could talk about what's the area or how many people, but the fact that he's selling, it's like a wholesale space for his other restaurant. So, and it definitely only allows you to sell on-site retail. So would that mean that he requires a use variance if he's not selling to his other restaurant on a retail basis?
Well, it says manufacturing, so if the village determined that this was manufacturing, and I guess that is because we don't have, that's what he's doing, he's cooking there. That's what he's doing, he's manufacturing. A manufacturer can sell to whoever he wants. The business isn't wholesaling, the business is manufacturing, right? If he wanted to make boats here and sell boats, if he wanted to sell boats here and wanted to make boats, he could make boats here.
Yeah. I'm just reading where it says that, but then he has to sell it on the same site. So
Where
then
does it say that?
exclusively on the premises, if you go to 342-31, A1,
Hold on,
E.
I'm looking. 342 what?
342-31,
Uh-huh.
A, capital A, number 1, small e.
Oh, I see where you are. You're going into the,
So if he's sold to his other restaurant at a retail price, I think he's fine. If he's planning on making it a wholesale distribution.
Okay, am I on?
Yeah,
Okay, I promise you, I'm not selling to anybody else. I'm just maintaining my restaurants, and I could sign a agreement if you want me on it, that no one else will be buying anything from me but for my own restaurants.
I mean, that's an easy solution, but do we think that it works as
are we certain that we're going to call cooking light manufacturing?
look,
Because it's not one of the listed uses under light manufacturing. And yet
where
it's
are
a
their
very
listed
common thing
uses?
to do.
Where are their listed or other processing? If you call it processing, you're processing raw foods into. finished
Yeah,
goods.
I know. There's no other way to describe it. I was trying to find.
Yeah, I will tell you that the issue of ghost kitchens is an issue everywhere because it's a new thing, you know. Where you have, this is a little different because he's manufacturing for himself, so it's not quite a ghost kitchen. You know, most of those are like places you call up. There's no real restaurant. Here, he's got real restaurants.
Well, technically, if he set up some sort of sales to the space, if he could do something on the books that he was, this is a
He's
separate.
selling on the space.
He
Sorry?
is.
He's gonna have a
We
retail
have.
operation there.
No. What I meant was then these products that you're cooking, you're also going to sell at your other restaurant on the avenue. Is that correct?
Yes. Other places too.
I thought he said just his own restaurant.
Just my
And
own
these-
restaurants. Just
Just
my
on the-
own restaurant. I'm not selling to anyone beside my own restaurant.
And
Wait,
he's
but
ready,
just your
he's
own
ready to,
restaurants in Mamaroneck or your own restaurants in other places?
And my own restaurants in Mamaroneck, and I'm looking to expand. I'm not gonna lie at you.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I'm gonna expand. This is too big for 2 stores. I'm expanding,
so
but this-
technically, if you could set up a process where you're selling retail to your other businesses, it's like when you own property and you rent it to your business and you own it, but you rent it because of the implications of that you get. If you
Okay.
sold the product to your other businesses, you would be code compliant because you have the right to just taking it off, taking it away and then selling it somewhere. It seems to be not code compliant.
okay,
Well,
I'm
can I
basically
ask a
just
question? Are you actually selling it to your other, are you actually selling it to your other restaurant, or are you just producing it for your other restaurant?
I'm producing it to my other restaurants. No sale. It's all under the same
Right.
payroll, under the same thing. There's no sale
All right,
involved,
so
no money
he's
involved.
not selling it. The restaurant portion up front is manufacturing different types of food that are being sold to the public?
No, same food.
The same. So your processing operation is feeding your restaurant,
Yes,
but you're also cooking that food up in your takeout place. Is that
yes.
correct?
Same
Right.
food, yes. I'm sorry.
Right. Okay. And let me ask you a question. What percentage of your processing area is dedicated to producing food for your restaurant on the avenue versus the retail takeout space within the confines of this building?
Again, it's a number hard to give you. We know how businesses are. It could be a success restaurant, it could be a failure, but we're looking at it as success. So I'm hopefully at least 40 to 50% goes to the front.
Okay. All right. So you're saying it's 40 to 50%.
I'm hoping.
Okay.
But do you understand, Doug, that it says in the code that he can't sell the product that he's manufacturing there anywhere else except on that site? So if he doesn't sell it to his other businesses, that seems to be not compliant.
No. He actually is producing it for his other business.
Right, and it says if you manufacture it in the C2, you have to sell the products right there on site. You can't sell it anywhere else.
Okay, well, he's not, he just said that he's gonna send 40 to 50% of that food to his other restaurant, and he's gonna sell the balance of it out of his takeout.
Yes.
Right, but it says that you can't set up a manufacturing place in the C2.
No, I understand, Meg. No, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm
It's
saying
just
if he set it up as a separate concern and sold it to his other businesses, we would have nothing to say. We could talk about how many people are there or the space,
Right.
but he's
So,
complying with the idea that he's selling the product.
I think we could I think the question might be whether we could interpret this to mean something else. Could we interpret, I don't know that we can, but I'm just thinking,
I think you have two operations here.
we do. The
You have a
restaurant and
restaurant, you have a takeout restaurant, and then you have a food processing facility
Mhm.
housed within the same building. Because if I'm not mistaken, the takeout cooks up front and sells at the takeout counter. The processing operation in the back processes the food for transportation to his other restaurant. And the way I see it is that if he sold the food out of the processing operation to his other restaurant, even if he sold it for $1, it's still a sale. business-wise, if business-wise, he can take this processing plant and sell the food to his other restaurant.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking when I read.
And if he does that, then he's compliant. Because the restaurant, in my opinion, is a separate, the takeout restaurant is a separate entity in itself.
But he would have to set it up that way. He just said it's all the same
I
company.
could
If
set
the
it up
restaurant
anyway.
is a separate entity in itself, if the
Right.
restaurant is separate from the manufacturing processing
Right.
plant,
Yeah.
then I'm not sure that's solves your, I mean, I don't see how that, I don't agree. If it's that way, then I think I have a bigger problem with this. Because
It just
clearly
says
that's not the intent of this.
It says it is
So-
sold exclusively on the premises. It doesn't say it's sold by the same business. It says that it's supposed to be sold exclusively on the premises.
Yeah, but if you know what, if you asked me, I would interpret that's what it's intended as. The point is, you're producing goods for your business. You're not producing goods to be sold elsewhere. I think the retailer would have to be one business, and that one business would have to be selling retail.
That's why I was saying it's a use variance to do the point of using it as a ghost kitchen to supply product for another restaurant.
No, I
Is-
understand.
It would be a use variance.
Right.
Right. No, I think we agree on that. I think the question is, how can, if we're looking to, how can it work? Is the bigger question. How do we get this to work if we're looking to grant a special permit?
That's the question.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know what that is unless he opens the separate restaurant portion up front and sells to both his takeout and his other restaurant.
Let me ask you a question here. This is Ted DeMore speaking again. We're talking about whether or not this project should be classified as a use variance project or an area variance project or just a special permit. We know we need a variance to operate here. But we put before you the proofs that we are not a self-created hardship. The applicant is Mr. Lum, not Abe Abdallah. Abe is the potential tenant, and the variance is needed by Mr. Lum so he can rent the space, and he's got a severe financial difficulty here, and it's not a self-created hardship. And we think we've made the proofs for you to consider that since it's not a self-created hardship, maybe it should be granted a variance.
Well, I don't think
If
the
you
proof
want
is
to apply
sufficient.
for a use variance, I think that would be fine. But if you're going to apply for a use variance, you have to actually meet, file an application for a use variance and make the application with the findings as needed for a use variance.
Besides proving that you're not a self-created hardship, and besides giving the financial information that you have in front of you with this application package, what more would be needed?
Well, this is Greta.
I
I
did-
would like to see some evidence from realtor. You've said that realtors couldn't rent out the property. I'd like to see an affidavit from the realtors that you used to say that you could not, that the owner could not rent the property at the market rate.
I think that if we're finding for an area variance, and I'm not saying we are, if we're finding for an area variance and hardship is irrelevant, and we don't need anything else. If we're finding for a use variance, then you have to make the findings. So the 5 findings are, just pulling them out.
I got them right here if you want them.
I don't have them. The applicant is deprived of all economic use or benefit So you'd have to have the proof from realtors that they couldn't rent it out. The alleged hardship is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood. It will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood and has not been self-created. So the big one, if you're going to go for use variance, is the financial hardship. And you would have to have actual proof of the financial hardship. You'd have
May I
to
make
have
a comment?
numbers of costs. You'd have to have costs. You'd have to have show how you in fact put it up out for offered it in the market, how many offers you've gotten or not offers that you've gotten, and things like that.
May I make a comment, Chair?
Yeah.
So the notice of disapproval was based on the 342-47 and not 342-31E, but it does not specify that it's being disapproved as an area variance or a use variance, but it did not include that section that Meg brought up.
As for myself speaking for the applicant, if we do not want to go down the road towards a use variance, we can continue discussing the area variance and take the use variance off the table.
But I think you've got a problem with an area variance that both Doug and Meg have pointed out, which is that for an area, whether or not the building inspector and this letter of disapproval was there, the requirement, what is a permitted use in the district? Light manufacturing in compliance with 342-47, but the requirements are that you sell it exclusively on the premises. So you would need, yeah.
Well, if he's selling it on the premises for someone that takes it away in a truck to another restaurant, doesn't that qualify?
Well, that's what Meg was trying to get at. If you sell it at retail, so if you sell it at retail to your other restaurants, which requires that, in a sense, you have two separate entities. You have Mamaroneck Avenue, you have Hash-O-Nash, let's just call it Hash-O-Nash, is owned by Hash-O-Nash LLC, and you have this premises, which is called Boston Post Road LLC, and Boston Post Road sold at retail the food to Hash-O-Nash LLC, then you could probably do it. Then I think we could, that would work.
Can I jump in, please?
Okay. I'm pretty sure that, Abe, let me just speak there for a second. That's pretty much the accounting method that Abe would be using, because if he's got 3 restaurants that he's serving his foods to, he's keeping track by money of how many trays or plates are going to one place versus another place, and it's an accounting method that he knows which restaurant's making a profit and which one's not by how much food they're using, and it's an accounting thing. Sure, they would be doing that.
No, he'd have to literally sell it to the restaurants.
It is going to happen that way because they're all different entity. They're not the same corporation.
All right. So, I just want to be clear here. So you're going to have a food preparation location.
Yes.
Which is going to sell to your restaurant on the avenue.
Yes.
And your takeout restaurant on the Post Road.
Basically, that's what's going to happen because all different entity.
All right. So you're saying your takeout place on the Boston Post Road, which shares the space with this preparation area, is going to be 2 separate entities. You're going to have Food Prep LLC, Takeout LLC, and Hash-O-Nash LLC. Okay. And Food Prep LLC is going to sell to Takeout LLC and Hash-O-Nash LLC.
Yes. Basically what we have in a central kitchen, what we call, is it's the same entity, the takeout and the kitchen. But the bagel shop, it's under different corporation, Hash-O-Nash under different corporation. So of course we're gonna sell it to them, and Hash-O-Nash has to pay back what they used.
Right.
So
I understand that.
We're selling it.
But I'm looking at the takeout restaurant within the confines of the building. Of the
If it-
food processing.
If it's one processing, Doug, and the processing sells some of the food directly to the public there, I don't think they need a separate entity for that. I'm making the
Okay.
food here, and we're selling some of it to the people who come in off of Boston Post Road, and some of it to the people who are
Yeah.
Hash Nash LLC.
Right. So
I
you're
don't
selling
think it needs a separate entity
LLC,
for the takeout.
you're gonna sell it to Hash or Nash, and you're gonna sell it to the people who are going into the takeout restaurant.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
I have a problem with this. I think this is really, we're going against the plain meaning of the regulation. You know, we're twisting it to try to accommodate this applicant who may be really sympathetic, but we're, you know, this is not the plain meaning of what the rules are. So I have an issue doing this.
I hear what you're saying, Greta.
hello?
Okay.
Yeah, yes?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the code is written that it's supposed to be that you're able to make things for yourself to sell right there on the moment in the. That's what the intent of the code is. They didn't want to start something that's like a ghost kitchen.
Meg, you said 31E, right?
Yeah.
342-31?
Yeah, small e.
Yes, small e. Under number 1.
I mean, I think that's absolutely right. I think the use variance here is really the solution to his problem. And if in fact has been an unable to rent it for anyone else, then a use variance might be the correct, might be appropriate. So
The place is going to be up for rent for a long time. It's not, nobody's taking it. And believe me, he has to drop the rent down for me to be able to take it.
then I think that it would, if it meets, then there's no reason that you couldn't turn this into an application for a use variance.
Like I got it for under market value just because nobody wants to take it. Is that simple as
Understand,
that?
and that all of that supports the idea that a use variance would be an appropriate solution here. But what we're saying is that that's the way you have to go, that trying to move something into a use, into that use, just where it doesn't work, doesn't work.
Chair, just again, the disapproval doesn't say use or area, but I think if you do go with the use, also the area would still apply because of the percentages.
If we go with a use variance, I don't know that we would need the area variance issue, because if we're going for a use variance, we could grant whatever conditions we want. So we wouldn't
Okay.
have to give it an area variance, because we would be granting a use variance for the operation of a processing establishment and takeout restaurant. And that would be the use variance, the food processing establishment, with no limitations on selling it to his own, to restaurants kind of thing, to his own restaurant. So I don't think they'd need an area variance if they might, and I don't know if they need a special permit either, actually, because they'd be coming for a use, and the use they'd be coming for is, let's say, light manufacturing / food processing. That would be the variance, because they wouldn't need a variance for the retail portion, for the takeout portion. So I guess they would need a special permit for the takeout portion, which is
Mhm.
still a restaurant, but the manufacturing portion would be all covered by a use variance, and they wouldn't need a special permit.
Would the next step be to get an amended plan examiner notice and respond to that, or respond to what you're saying tonight and amend our application?
Looking for,
If it's a different request, you'd have to renotice it, right? If it's-
If you continue the public hearing, people will just still come out, won't they? Without
Well-
getting renoticed?
8SP, you had a proposed expansion of the, so the disapproval is disapproved. The proposed expansion of the existing kitchen is in violation where such area shall, that doesn't say it's an area variance. That disapproval actually could work for a use variance as well, because all it says is it violates the code. So there's
To
no
tell you the
reason,
truth,
what?
Frank and I discussed this, what kind of a variance I should be going for, and he said sometimes the board likes to decide whether it will be use or area, and we left it that way, and that's the way he wrote it. So it just says I need a variance, doesn't say area or use, and that's why I included in my proofs the fact that it was not self-created, because for an area variance, it doesn't matter if it's self-created, it just has to be a practical difficulty. But I included the proof, not enough of proof, in the fifth point of the statement of points about it not being self-created, but we can expand on that to give you further proofs that you mentioned earlier.
Well, it's not the issue that it's not self-created. The issue is financial hardship. I mean, that's the crux of a use
And we have
variance
that.
is the existence of financial hardship. So you would have to demonstrate the financial hardship that, you know, it costs this much to operate, you know, and I'm making up these numbers, obviously, and I have no idea, you know, if it costs him $1,000 a year in taxes, and he can rent it for $1,100 a year, and he has no other costs, then that's one thing. If the cost of operating the premises are $20,000 a year, and he can't rent it for the $20,000 or $20,000 plus whatever else you would need, that's what he's got to show, that he can't rent it and make make a return on.
We can
his
put that together. We
property.
can put that together.
Yeah,
I'll put that together.
And as Greta had mentioned earlier, we'd need actual something from, you know, proof from the real estate agent saying he couldn't rent it or she couldn't rent it.
Not a problem. That won't be a problem.
But now with respect to the notice, doesn't the notice say area variance?
No.
No, it
No,
said
just the
variance.
application.
No, the notice, like the notice that went to the neighbors.
If it included or directed the neighbors to the application says area variance, but the notice itself does not.
So the notice to
Let
the
me just
neighbors
look at,
said there's an application
notice.
for a variance before the board. Is that what happens? Is that what it says?
The
No, it
notice-
doesn't say that. No, I just put that notice of disapproval in front of you.
Not the notice of disapproval. I'm not asking about the notice of disapproval. I know the notice of disapproval doesn't say area variance. I'm saying you had to send out notice of your application to the neighbors. What did
Yes.
that application, that notice that you sent out say?
Let me get that. Just a
Or what does the
second.
sign say on the property, right? There's a sign posted on.
Yeah, what, and that.
All right, I've got the sign. Let me get the sign. That's easier for me to get hold of.
I turned your screen share off because you started going into your emails. So you're gonna have to turn your screen share back on.
Okay, I'll just get this. What's on the sign?
Okay, it says on this site, 2 special permit and the variance to operate a restaurant and a manufacturer in District C2 zoning. Is proposed, I'm sorry, I'm reading it off my phone and it's foggy. Okay, then this matter will be discussed at the zoning board at such and such a date.
This notice is deficient. You know, I don't know if we're going to allow this, but this idea that you don't know what you're going for and they come here and we decide means that people didn't get properly noticed, I think, beforehand, if they don't know what the person is applying for.
That was requested of us because of reactions from a previous application. It was requested of the building inspector to not.
Who requested?
Council.
Yeah, we discussed it with the building inspector because we don't think it's ultimately the building inspector's decision as to who decides whether it's a use or area variance. That's ultimately the decision that should be up to the board. I personally don't feel like that's a deficient notice. I think it's obvious that they're coming before them for a variance, so.
Okay, so the notice was fine, and so the notice is adequate. So I think then the notice doesn't say that it was an area variance. Does it? And it says it's a variance for manufacturing. So I think the information is there. They know what they're doing.
Very quickly, Chair, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just a little bit confused. So we're suggesting a use variance from, is it 347.30 or 342.31, correct? A1E.
Yes.
So 342.47 still applies, correct?
Well, no.
So, okay, so in what way do you feel that 342.47 wouldn't apply anymore then?
Well, it depends on what they're asking for a use variance for. They could ask for a use variance for manufacturing use, period. It doesn't have to be they're not asking for a variance to be able to not sell it at retail. They can ask for a use variance simply for manufacturing use in a C2 district.
That's you.
But if
I don't see
the
why that would then be subject to a special permit as well.
food service, they would still have the food service establishment.
Well, they'd still need the special permit for the restaurant portion.
Yeah.
This isn't giving them a special permit for the restaurant portion, but the manufacturing use, there's no reason they would have to get a special permit. I mean, a special permit for I think that's fine to operate a restaurant and manufacture. I think
Okay.
that's a pretty.
No, I understand what you're saying. I just wanted to gain some clarity because my concern was that if they needed a variance from that provision, that under the use variance, we were going to be regulating how their operations are set up. And I wanted to steer clear of that, but I understand what you're saying.
You think we should go?
I think
are you recommending that we go with, I understand what you're getting at. Are you recommending that we go for the special permit as well?
You know,
Are you saying special permit to manufacture? You're not saying the special permit.
I think what the issue is here is there's case law out there that talks about how when you're giving variances, you can't regulate. And there's actually there's case law on both sides, but there's some case law that implies that you sort of can't tell a business how it has to operate.
right. And so
to the extent that we can give a special permit where you can put other more specific, it might allow us to have more specific conditions. I think that's what council is suggesting.
I think ultimately, I think we're fine to move forward with the use variance at this time.
Okay.
I'm troubled by the fact that these notices are not more specific, that there's just 2 special permits and a variance. It's difficult enough for people who are not aware of what's, are not ingrained in the village to know where to go with the code or look up applications and things. And it seems very vague. It'd be better to to.
I think this is a question that we can talk about. I mean, that's a good, it's a question. I disagree with you because I think telling somebody in the public, whether it's a use or an area variance, tells them nothing. The end result is here, they know what's going to happen here. There's going to be a restaurant and there's going to be manufacturing, and that's the key here. But we can have this discussion, not now, but we can include, like when we talk about our application, which if we ever get back to it, that would be a good thing to discuss as well. The
Yeah, and if I may just,
subject of the notices.
if I may just clarify the concern, it was related to the building inspector stating that it is some certain type of variance, and then the board would overturn that without an appeal by a third party, someone appealing a decision. So it would give the board more leeway to determine those items without overruling the building inspector without an appeal.
Okay, well, I think at the end of the day is he needs us to amend his application to turn this into a use variance with all the proof necessary about financial hardship needed to get a use variance, as well as continuing the application for a special permit for the restaurant.
And Chair, I'm gonna keep
Yes.
looking into this a bit more on the special permit for was it 342-47. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on it before advising fully. I think right now we're fine, but I'm going to take a look at it and then we'll let the applicant know whether we need to add that in as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else before I should ask, is there anybody from the public who wishes to address this application?
I'm hearing nothing.
Okay. Anybody else on the board want to say anything before we move on? Okay, we're adjourned on this application. The next application is 25A 2019 Agency Construction for Urban Manpower and Supply, 526 and 530 Fayette Avenue. I want to say something. Is the applicant here?
Give me one moment to turn them on.
Before we begin, because I think we may not be hearing this.
Okay, they're on.
Okay, an applicant can always bring back an applicant. I mean, we determined that there's no limit on, can you ask again? But I do not see that there's any reason for this board to reconsider, to hear the exact same application that we heard last month. So unless council I thought that there were additional points, but as I read it, all you're doing is providing us exactly the same information. So my question for council is whether or not we have to rehear the exact same application filed as soon as we turned it down, because I don't want to set that as a precedent. I thought this was completely, was new. There was new information, new something here. Council, do you have any thoughts, Christy?
Are you asking me? If it's
Yeah.
exactly the same application, I think you have your discretion as a board. I don't think you have to hear anything, especially if it's the exact same application. But I think that perhaps we give them an opportunity to explain why they're before the board again, unless that's common knowledge that I'm not aware of. But maybe there's something in the application that is not popping out to us, and maybe we give them the opportunity to at least explain why they've come back.
Okay, I'll take that under recommendations. Does anybody on the board disagree with that? Otherwise, I'm willing to let them explain why they came back.
Yeah, because I didn't find anything in the application for me to understand what we're looking at.
Yeah, it looks exactly the same. They're like saying, here's our application.
I mean, is it gonna hurt if we just listen?
I'm sorry?
Is it gonna hurt if we just listen? And if it is the same, then it's the same, okay? But, I think we should give them a chance to speak.
I guess we can, but frankly, we work really hard and these meetings are really long and.
Right, I think maybe, I agree. I mean, that's my thought, Greta, but I guess since he did file it and they are here, or she did file and she's here, can you please address why you think we should hear this again?
Sure, thank you.
Can you identify yourself first,
Yes,
please?
my name's Annie Klein. I'm an associate at Del Bello, Donnell and Weingarten, Wise and Whitaker on behalf of Agency Construction Corporation. The variance was granted, and we do not have a problem with that. We're very grateful. However, a condition was added to the resolution that we think is inappropriate, and we're just asking for that to be removed. So you already considered all of the information and granted the variance. The issue is this condition to the resolution. So we originally submitted a letter requesting that we meet with you and the condition be discussed. I know, Chair, went during the deliberations, you had stated that you wanted the ability for the applicant to come back and discuss that condition. And so we submitted that letter, and then we were advised to submit the application materials. I don't see what's different. We're not asking for a new variance. The variance was granted. We're simply asking for that condition to be eliminated. Nothing has changed at all in our materials since this was granted. It was really just that that condition that was put on during your deliberations in February.
Uh-oh, what happened?
What?
Oh, I'm sorry. So yes, so that's just why we're here, is to respectfully request that that condition, it's the only condition in the resolution, be eliminated.
Well, let me ask you this question. Do you have new information, or are you just going to repeat everything you said when you first filed the application? I mean, that's the bottom line. We considered all the information when we determined that we should impose a condition. If you are saying, well, we're going to repeat that information to explain why we don't think you should impose this, we already considered it. So is there some reason, something else that you're saying we didn't think about or we didn't take into consideration when we considered it that we should consider now? Because otherwise all we're doing is reconsidering essentially the variance.
Right. So yes, I mean, what the variance was calculated on was the entire building being used for office, which is how we came up with the 26 parking spaces that were required and why we needed a 10 parking space variance. The condition specifically says that it is for future unknown uses by the potential tenants, the tenant space, which was shown on the second floor plans. But it is an unknown future use. It's office use. That's how this was calculated. This is how this number was determined and why we asked for 10 spaces as a variance. And if another use comes in that requires more parking than office, they will require another variance and have to come before you. So it's the condition is just, there's really no basis for it. And there might have been some confusion as to that in the deliberations, but really we think tying that condition to this resolution is, is hurtful to the applicant and not letting him use his entire building.
Well, I just want to say that part of the argument that the applicant made was that he himself and the operation of his business only needed a few spaces. And while the code requires a requirement for office, which is the code requirement, so it doesn't require just the number you're giving, it requires 10 more than you're providing. So that is what's in the code for office, but there's a huge difference. And the argument for why you didn't need this many was in part because of the kind of use that the applicant himself has. I point out that the kind of use, if he rented it to assuming they were ever going to exist anymore, something like a WeWork, and he had 20 people each having a different phone operation in there, he might need a lot more parking spaces than he would for the kind of operation that he's proposing. And that was the issue that we considered. And in granting the variance, we imposed this condition. So again, unless you can tell me why, what you're saying is we should be granting the variance without the condition. We thought this condition was important to the variance. So unless you can tell me what's new about why we shouldn't have imposed this condition on the variance. Or are you saying the reason is because it's not fair to the owner? I mean, that's my thought. Does anyone else on the board have a different thought about this?
Yes. And you know, my thoughts were very clear at the last time we voted on this application. And I actually voted no because that condition was put into the application. And I said, you know, you're imposing a hardship on the owner. She just said that. The
And
question
so
I
why
have,
should we rehear it? But what is new about this, Doug, that should make us rehear the fact that it's imposing a hardship, outside of the fact that hardship isn't relevant to the determination? And if we didn't impose this condition, we might end up turning down the application. So who knows? Meg or Greta or Abby, do we have
I
any?
concur that I don't hear anything new coming from the attorney than to for us to consider.
Abby, what did you say? Sorry.
No, I just said I agree. It doesn't sound like there's anything new here. So without a new anything to hang our hats on, I kind of think we should move on.
Greta, do you have something? Greta, did you say something?
Oh, I just said I agree.
Oh, okay. So I think, should we take a vote on this? Let's take a vote on this. And
what
the
are we
vote is
voting
this.
on?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
No, please.
I think you have done a good job of explaining why you're not going to move forward this, but I do think that we should treat it a bit more formally, where we should make sure to take a vote on it, maybe open the hearing, close it, and then vote on why you are not willing to amend the variance. I just want to make sure that we formalize the process at this point, just to confirm that we've covered all our bases, that it's not arbitrary or capricious.
Okay, is there any member from the public who wishes to address this application?
Do we have to open a hearing first?
I don't
It was a
think you know-
public hearing, so I don't know
Yeah.
that we have to do anything different.
Okay.
No, you
Technically, it's on
don't.
the public hearing menu, and we don't normally say the public hearing is open, so I don't
Right.
know if there's anything different.
Right, you would just close it. I'm just used to saying open and close the hearing from other boards, but you would just go ahead and close it.
Yeah, we don't
And
open hearings.
Just treat it how you would treat a normal hearing.
Right. So does anyone from the public wish to speak? Okay, then does the applicant want to say anything else, having heard our initial discussion?
No, I mean, I would just reiterate that the number was based on the office use, and regardless, it's going to require 26 spaces, and we're providing 16. So it's just, there's really no basis for limiting the portion of the building, but thank you for letting us speak again on this.
Okay, so if we're treating it like a normal application, we're not going to vote on it now. We'll just close it now. So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I make the motion.
Okay, so one of you motion.
I
Meg made the motion.
I second Greta's motion, okay?
Okay, good. Okay. Abby,
Yep.
Doug,
Sure.
okay, and I vote yes, and Meg and Greta, so the public hearing is closed. Okay. And we'll vote when I guess we'll vote like, as we do, treat it like any other application. So we'll vote when we would normally vote, whenever we normally would vote. Okay, we have a
Chair.
closed application, 28A 2019 Mark Castaldi for AVC Properties, and 29A 2019 Mark Castaldi for AVC Properties. So let's take 28A 1017 Grove Street first.
Chair, just so you know, the applicant is here and he's requesting to be heard, and I understand that this is the closed application, so it's at your discretion.
No.
Okay.
We don't normally take comment for a closed application. He did submit a survey, I believe. Correct?
Yes.
So we have that new piece of information for us to look at.
Betty
Um,
Ann, do you have that?
Yeah, I do have it
Oh, okay, you do have it. Okay, I just want to make sure.
somewhere.
Okay.
So you had told me to only circulate the request for reopening the hearing, but not to circulate the documents that were submitted.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what
I
you
misunderstood.
had.
I screwed that up. I screwed it up. He
It
did
is
ask to
posted with the
reopen the
agenda.
hearing. He did ask to reopen the hearing, so I apologize. I guess we should vote on whether we want to reopen the hearing.
And I
Don't we
would like-
need a unanimous vote to reopen the hearing?
That I don't know. I'd have to look up quickly, but I do want you to keep in mind that you do not have to reopen the hearing just to accept that document.
I understand. That was why I thought we had, so we'll have to distribute it, then I apologize. And since I hadn't distributed it, we should distribute it and have everybody have a chance to consider it. But anyway, let's take a vote on his motion to reopen the hearing. On his request to reopen the hearing. Does any member of the board want to reopen the hearing? You all have the request, so you had the information as to why he made the request. So I'll make the question. All those in favor of reopening the hearing, raise your hand. Let's see if I mean your real hand. We can see that on. No. Okay, so we are not reopening the hearing. Okay, that's pretty simple. Now, he submitted a new survey, which I did not have Betty Ann circulate again because it was recent and we had that limit, but we should be able to consider the survey because that was an element of our discussion at the last hearing as to what was necessary for this. So I think Betty Ann will have to circulate that survey. We all get to consider the survey and then we'll have to make our decision at the next meeting, I think is what we need to do.
And when was the hearing closed, Betty Ann?
Well, in his notice, he said that he consented to extending it.
Right. So we can reopen, right? But
No,
I
don't mean reopening. He consented to the decision taking more than the 62 days.
It was closed at the March meeting.
Oh, it was closed at the March meeting. Okay, so.
Yes.
So it's not an issue anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so then I guess we're done with that one for the day. We will, Betty Ann will distribute the survey to all the board members. We will then have the opportunity to look at it and discuss it and vote at the next meeting. Okay? Okay. Boy. I have to I have to step out for a second, so I'm going to put myself on. I'm going to take the screen. Let's take some one of the closed applications tonight. So Meg, do you want to take over and do? I mean, we can all take a break, but I think that's too difficult with this Zoom thing. So I think it would be better just if perhaps Maggie, you can lead and do a discussion of the closed application for Paterno. You okay with that? Or not, since we can't hear you? You have to unmute
You have to
yourself.
unmute yourself.
Once I get off my unmute button. So the closed application for Paterno.
Yeah, you okay if I leave you?
Come back, but I'll try.
Okay, you can start. And if you don't get finished, I'm only going out for a second, so.
Okay. So Paterno is 606 Rockland Avenue. He came back with a new survey, new dimensions on his survey. Anybody have comments about this application? I'm thinking that we had our questions answered from the previous review that we had. We had questions because we couldn't figure out the alignments to mostly to the front yard. And that to my satisfaction, it's clarified in the survey that's there. Frank, am I describing it correctly that we had some problems with the dimensions on the survey? And
Yes, yes, that's correct. He corrected what was wrong. So I think he complies, with what the variance he's asking for.
with what we need to hear.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you want to discuss findings?
So, thank you, Betty Ann. So we discussed the findings before we get to a vote. We're talking about what he has applied for and what we're looking at. I was taken off guard that I'm doing this, as you can tell. Give me a moment. So he's looking for an area variance for the, let me make sure I got the right one. Sorry. An area variance for the one-story addition and the deck. Nope, that's what he already did. I'm so sorry. I was not
And the
prepared.
driveway.
And the driveway. I'm trying to get to exactly where it is. I'm sorry. Leanne, can you help me with exactly what the application was for specifically?
Oh, of course I can.
Thank you.
If I can just scroll up now. Sorry. So this is for the front yard setback where 20 feet is required and the applicant proposes 19.5. And the maximum allowed lot coverage is 35% and the applicant proposes 39.7. And a 34254B where the side and rear yard setbacks, the driveway setbacks are required is 5 and the applicant proposes 2. Bless you.
So do we have any discussion about any of those specifics? I think we all decided, Robin, that our questions have been answered from the review before with the new survey that we got. And so then we reviewed exactly what the application was for. Does anybody have any comments? Which way we're leaning? Do we think that this is something that will have an impact on the neighborhood? Is this something that, I'm not getting a lot of response, Robin, from
Here,
people.
so yes, it's, okay, so I think, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it is close, when you drive by, it does look close to the street, but given that we rely on a survey, and the survey is to the front yard, it's not, the variance is very small with respect to the front yard. I don't think it's a big deal. The one that concerned me the most was the 2 feet side yard setback from the driveway, and that concerns me a lot. But given that it is county-owned retaining, that the property next door is not a development site, it is county-owned, I think that would be the only reason that I do not think that this is a significant, it is a significant variance. I think 2 feet, a 5 foot, a requirement of 5 feet going down to 2 feet is a significant variance. But the only reason I think that it is okay to do that is given that there is not a neighbor and there's not a development site, and what's there is essentially county-owned property that's going to stay as county-owned property. So I think that would be the reason that we could grant the variance, that particular variance. I mean, there's no reason to have to have a two-car driveway, so we could, whatever, but I would be okay with it because of that.
I actually think that we actually granted a variance that had less than 2 feet, and that was on, I'm trying to remember where it was. And I remember we had that discussion because it was a street to where they would literally have to back out from the back of the house to come down, and we put a restriction on there that they could not put, and I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Grand Avenue.
Right,
Grand
it's
Avenue,
Grant Street.
that's correct. Grant Street. We actually granted it, it was less than 2 feet. Am I right or wrong, Frank?
Yes, that's right.
It was less than 2 feet. So I don't have any issue with the 2 foot on this particular application.
I feel the same way, that it's tucked in the corner there. It's not going to impact another neighbor. It's just going to impact the marshes and the river. So Robin, if I'm continuing, so then at this point I would ask, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application.
Okay, and do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And so Doug, do you want to give us the reasons?
Oh, Robin, I'm going to leave that to you. You're better at that than I am. You notice how I passed that buck right over, right?
I did.
I'll continue. I'll keep on my effort here.
Detriment to the neighborhood.
Right. I have the list in front of me.
Great.
It would be difficult to achieve this by other means.
Well, wait. The first finding is that whether an undesirable change will be produced in the neighborhood. So that's the first one.
Okay, the list I'm looking at is in a different order, so.
Oh, okay. So then do your order. So do your order. It's fine.
Okay, I have first whether the benefit can be achieved by some other feasible means. Because of the weird shape of the lot and the position of the driveway, I think it would be difficult. Does anybody agree with me that it could be done some other way? I think it would be difficult to increase the space without asking for these variances. I don't think it's an undesirable change in the neighborhood as it's tucked in the corner. So where it has the largest variance, that side yard, is not impacting another person. The request is substantial, but again, because of where it's located on the street, I don't think it's, that's why it doesn't have an undesirable impact. And the alleged difficulty is self-created because they wanted a bigger house.
Nicely done.
Just to clarify, only one of the that was good. Just to clarify, only one of the variances is substantial.
I go through everything.
No, two are, because one is, I think, 25%.
Where's there a 25% variance?
Anything over 15% is considered substantial.
We haven't determined that, and the courts are not 100% consistent. But what do you think is 25%?
The front yard setback is 20 inches. And
the front yard setback is
20 feet, and they're proposing 19 and a half.
Right. Where's that 25%
maybe I'm at
variance?
2.5. I think maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe it's 2.5.
Okay.
You're right. That can't be 20%.
But the side yard is substantial. The side yard is substantial.
Yes, but besides that, she was saying something else was substantial.
Okay.
You're talking about the 2 foot?
Yeah, the side yard is substantial. It's over 50%, but nothing else is.
Right.
Right.
But Ian, you got all that? I'm sorry, it was a little loose for giving you the findings.
No, that was good. I got it.
Okay.
I think, in terms of the feasibility, part of the prong, they could have they don't have to have such a big driveway. They could make it smaller. It's only because of this unique placement where the property is that when you balance all the factors, it's, I think a variance is reasonable. But I think on these prongs, there are a few things that go against them, but because of exactly where the location of the property is, that kind of, at least in my mind, that overrides these other factors.
I'll take over. Anybody else have anything to say to anything else to point to discuss about this before we vote?
No.
Meg, do you want to lead the vote since you finish up leading this thing?
Okay, Doug.
Yes.
Greta.
Yes.
Abby.
Can't vote on this one.
Oh, sorry. Robin
Yes.
and Meg says yes.
Okay, so this one is adopted. Thank you, Meg. Okay, how about Marco Variale, application 3SP 2020, Marco Variale for Padre Pio Osteria, 501 Halsted. My thoughts are that this is it's a site that has been a restaurant. It has not previously had dedicated parking. Yes, it isn't 100% clear from the lease that it is dedicated to this use only, but since it previously didn't have parking, whether it's dedicated for this use only, I think is adding more to it. It is a restaurant, which will make it much more amenable to the neighborhood. The neighbors had been very concerned about a prior application and the amount of traffic it was going to generate. This one is more, it's a restaurant as opposed to a takeout or a pizza place. It's not like a prior owner. There was a bar here at a while, which had those. So I think that, I think I'm okay with this. I think that the special permit here is very good. And I don't think I have any issues with granting the special permit on the hours that they have applied for.
I'll agree with you, Robin.
I agree that this is a better, probably have less impact than a pizzeria would. I'm concerned, I don't have documented evidence that it's always been this use. It's concerns about the fact that we're not requiring the adequate parking, that we're not, because we're taking it, we're all assuming it's always been this use, that it didn't change and become something else in between. I'm not quite sure. I agree with Robin that it's not the full lot and the impact on parking if the intensity of use is greater.
Wait, I'm sorry, Meg, can you say that again? What don't you agree with me about?
When we're looking at whether or not the impact, the need for parking has increased. And you're adamant that we're just looking at this one use. I have problems with this one use is not different. I don't know for sure that it wasn't a tavern that I would consider something different. I don't have documented evidence that it's always been a food establishment, something the same. We're making that assumption. And also this idea that you don't need to comply with the parking requirements because it's existing use from before the parking requirements went into service. But I have a problem when it's shared parking for the entire space. And to carve out one use hasn't changed and it doesn't have any increase on the parking lot. I'm concerned that other uses on the space have increased use. You're saying that they don't have the use of the parking lot, but if they had turned into something that needed to use the parking lot, they would need parking. So we don't know whether or not they had the use of the parking lot when it was in 1968, the same situation as now. So if all the uses, maybe it was written into the apartments that they could use the spaces in the parking lot, and it was one apartment, one large apartment, and now it's carved up into three, I think that's a greater impact on greater intensity of use of the parking lot. So between the increase of the intensity of use as a totality of the building and the fact that I don't have documented evidence that this has always been the same use, I have a problem with this, that I would actually think of approving this, but with the parking variance.
I only have one comment about this. First of all, the code clearly says that you don't need a variance. I mean, there's no question that that's what the code says. But more importantly, if anybody on the board wants additional information, in this case, Meg, you could have gotten some of that additional information. You could have gotten additional information like, could we get something from the owner that says that no one else has used it? Could we get something from the other? We could have asked for that.
There's been 3 or 4 owners since 1968. We already saw that. And the original owner
But the four owners don't matter. The issue isn't look, there's two different things here. First of all, if we have the date that measures when we determine if we have to, whether it was some use was 1968. We have no way of knowing what all the three uses are. The odds are we can't figure out what the three uses are, but maybe we could, just like he figured out, previous owners here. That's number one. Number two, our measuring date for what we're doing is today. So if none of those other uses have the right to use this parking lot, just because we don't know the answer to that. He said it, but there's no proof, as you say. We don't know the answer. If none of these other uses have the right to use it, then the use that he's putting, whether or not between 1968 and now somebody else used it, we're not saying, well, in 1993, somebody else had a right to use it. They don't have the right to use it now.
You don't have to use it now, but if they had to follow the parking requirements, you would have to supply some parking for those apartments. You would not be able to not supply parking for it.
I'm not sure why you would,
That's not what's before this board.
Right.
What's before this board?
We don't need to go in circles. We'll obviously disagree. I don't mean to extend this argument. I believe that we asked for documentation. We've been at this for a while. You're saying that I should have asked for more. We have asked. And
no, we asked for a specific document.
Let me just finish. So I feel like we did ask. They made a really great effort. You're saying I should have, well, no, we're still not closing the hearing until you absolutely exhaust everything. I believe that they've already tried and it doesn't exist. We don't have it. And it's up to the applicant to give us this information. And if we don't have it, then it's up to each one of us to decide if we need more to make this determination.
What I'm saying is, we asked the applicant for one piece of information. What was the use of this site? You raised today a completely different question, which was, what are the uses of the other properties nearby? The other properties in this building?
No, I'm saying I don't have documented evidence that this has been a restaurant since 1968. And we did raise that issue in the prior.
You're only talking about this, but what difference does it make? Let me ask you this. What difference does it make? Let's assume in 1968, it was a tavern. In 1933, it was a tavern. In 1975, it was a grocery store.
It was a dog kennel, or it was,
right.
Yeah.
And that, correct. And so in 1964, so in 1974, it did or didn't provide parking. We have no idea. But let's assume in 1974, it was some other use. Now we are here with a question for today. So today's question is it a special permit? Yes, it needs a special permit. What are the requirements? Well, with the requirements, it clearly doesn't have the parking that is required, okay? What does the code say? The code says if the non-conforming use, we're only looking at the non-conforming use today. We're not looking at whether or not in 1974, it wouldn't have changed the fact today, whether or not.
No, it's not a non-conforming use, which, as you pointed out, it's the fact.
It's a non-conforming parking. I'm sorry, you're right. But what I'm saying is, what difference would it have made in the code as it reads, whether or not in 1974, there was a completely different use here? With respect to this provision, which says that if it's a non-conforming, a building that is conforming, but which does not conform to the parking requirements shall not be considered to be non-conforming. So I don't understand why whatever the use that was there in 1974, because with the use that was there in 1974, or whatever, this made up year, wouldn't have any effect on what the use is today. And if the use in 1974 required more parking than wasn't provided, how does that change what should be provided today? That's where I've lost the connection.
As I understand it, it's in a sense, it's free. It isn't obligated to meet the parking requirements unless something changed on the lot to put more intensity of use since 1968. Am I wrong about that?
Well, it doesn't say if it has never changed. It's talking about it's here.
I'm not talking about change. I'm not talking about change. I'm talking about it's the intensity of use. But if we don't know how it's been used, we don't know whether it changed in its intensity. And I do know that apartments upstairs, it seems to have gone from one single large apartment to 3, which generally in our code means that there's more people.
That was a restaurant a few years ago.
So you're saying that if in 1968 it was a use that didn't require, let's say, any parking, let's make it as much as it could be. It was a use that didn't, even though in 1960, let's say, I don't remember some of those dates, we certainly have from the 50s, we certainly know in the 70s it was a tavern because we have those property records, those property tax.
It was a
records that say
restaurant
it was
just a little
tavern.
while ago.
So if we don't know, so you're saying because you don't know exactly what it was used for in 1960?
I don't know the history of the uses, so I don't know.
Wait.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Now I'm trying to understand.
Going around and around in circles, and I will not convince you. I said what I had to say, and I think we should hear from others.
It
Okay.
was a restaurant.
Okay, thank you, Doug. It was a restaurant. You
It
can
was
have
a
the
restaurant It was a restaurant a
all-
few years ago. Wait, excuse me, let me finish. It was a restaurant a few years ago, okay, and it was owned by
Fiamma.
Fiamma, which was that Walter Rogers' son? No, before that, okay? So it was a restaurant. So I don't know what we're talking about.
Okay, I'm ready
I
to
don't
move
care
on.
what happened in
Okay, Meg,
1968. It
Greg,
was a
did you have
restaurant.
something?
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
sorry.
I would just say that, the issues that Meg is discussing I think would be inherent for any application for this property. And if, we don't have the information, if the applicant doesn't have the information, the next applicant might not have the information. So, I mean, I think we just have to go forward, doing, imposing conditions perhaps that we think we may need, but it's, I don't think it should hold up the granting of the application necessarily.
I wasn't suggesting we go back and ask the applicant for it. I was saying more that if we had things we didn't have information, we could have asked before. That was all I was saying. Abby, do you have any thoughts?
No, I agree with Greta. I think it's been a restaurant. They provided as much information as they could. I think we should, move on in good faith, and that's kind of how I see it.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion? I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve this applicant, to approve the special permit. I think the condition that we need to have, since that's what we're basing it on, is that the parking be exclusive for this restaurant.
And I will second that.
Any other discussion on this before we vote?
We don't have to grant a variance for 2 parking spaces, do we?
No, because he doesn't need them because he's not non-conforming.
Okay.
So,
Chair,
in terms of enforcing that condition, if we find that people are parking in that parking space that's not within the hours of the restaurant, would that then be indicative of it not being exclusive, and then that'd be a violation?
Well, I think we only care that it's exclusive during the hours of operation of the restaurant.
Right.
If, for example, the owner wants to allow somebody to park there overnight when the restaurant is closed, I don't see why it would matter to the purpose of the variance. Excuse me.
It wouldn't, but in terms of enforceability and in terms of what they represented to us. Because what they represented to us was that no one else had use of the parking space.
But the lease
You want,
said,
I mean, if that's how you want to impose it, that it's going to be exclusive 24/7, I guess I would do that,
But
although I
isn't that
don't
what they
know
told us?
that I
But isn't
care.
that what they told us?
Well, he said
They
that.
told us it was exclusively for the restaurant. We didn't really go into details of when the
Right.
restaurant is closed, whether or not someone else could park there. We didn't ask that.
the lease was specific to the use of the parking lot during business hours.
Right.
Oh.
So it was exclusive for them during the restaurant operation hours,
Okay.
which is what you had indicated before, Robin.
Well, that's what I thought was reasonable, but I didn't remember what the lease said. So, well, it doesn't say
Alright.
exclusive, but I think we have to put that in. Yes, that's what it says. And it specifically says customers shall not park in the lot overnight, which means the owner probably uses the lot overnight.
Right.
So did you want something more from the property owner to
No,
speak to this being
I think
specific?
I don't want anything more. I'm satisfied. At least personally, I'm satisfied with what we have, which is that during the hours that the restaurant is operating, and there are hours in the application, I don't have them in front of me. During those hours, it's exclusively for the restaurant use.
Right. I agree.
Me too.
Okay, let's take a vote. I made the motion, Doug seconded it. I think Doug, or somebody seconded. Did somebody
Yes.
I
second?
did.
Okay, so let's take a vote. Doug,
Yes.
Greta,
Yes.
Meg,
Voting no because I believe they need a parking variance.
okay, and Abby.
Yes.
Okay, so this is approved.
120
the next-
Madison?
The next is Hillside, oh, it was 120 Madison, right? 6 SP 2020 Elizabeth Smoltz for 120 Madison LLC, 120 Madison Street. Anyone, thoughts? Special permit.
This is the swim with no changes. There's been no, we haven't heard no news. I see no reason not to renew the special permit.
Without a term.
I've always had trouble without a term. But I'm ready to listen to arguments for without a term.
I don't think I want to impose an argument without a term. So, I mean, we normally give 3 years.
We normally give 3 years the first time and unlimited after that.
No, I understand, but I mean, I don't know. I'd
If you
go 5 years.
want to impose, if you want to start imposing terms, then I think you need to, I would like to know why.
Oh, 120 Madison, that's the swimming pool with the
Yeah.
20-year lease? No term on that one. They have a 20-year lease. I mean, if it changes uses, they got to come to us anyway.
Well, that's true whether or not they had a 20-year lease. Anybody who changes.
Right,
uses.
no, I understand, okay? But, I mean, I think they're there for the long haul. I think they've been there and I think they're good.
Anyone else have anything to say about this?
I just
Okay,
know
does
that
someone want to make a motion?
I'm not saying I'm opposing this, but when we give it a special permit without term, we're not giving it to the person, we're giving it to the space for that use. So other owners could come in and use it and they would not need to come to us for a special permit.
Correct. So if another swim club called Blue Swim decided to take over the operation of the swim club on the same conditions, they
Right,
could.
right. I'm just
Right.
pointing that out so that it doesn't seem that there's a lot of concern. What else can you do with a swim club? Park the car and you go inside and you swim. But that's I'm just making the point that sometimes we're not giving it to these people in a sense, we're giving it to the location.
But we're giving
Well,
it
I
to the
think
use.
all-
We're not giving it to the
Right, we're giving
location.
it to the use, yes.
Yeah,
The use at this location.
Right.
right.
I make a motion to approve the special permit without a term.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay,
We have to go
Abby.
through,
Yes.
Meg,
yes.
Greta,
Yes.
Doug,
For sure.
and I vote yes as well, or for sure, either one. Same conditions as, we should have said this, but clarifying the same conditions as we had before, but no term.
Right.
Mhm.
I agree.
Okay, the next application we can discuss is Frank Novello for Hillside Avenue Deli. Application 7 SP 2020 901 905 Mamaroneck Avenue. It's a special permit. Discussion.
I mean, that place has been there forever. It has. You know, my kids went to Mamaroneck Avenue School and I remember Hillside Deli. Different owner. I mean, I don't have an issue with it. We've never, has anybody ever complained about Hillside Deli? Not that I know of.
No, we actually have something from the police chief that said that there have been no complaints or violations in the past
Yeah.
2 years.
Right. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. I'd make a motion, we approve it.
I definitely think we should approve it. When it comes to food establishments, I have some concern with it having no term and not asking. It can change hands. These people seem running it very well, and they close at 5. Food establishments have a potential for having a high impact on a neighborhood. So I would prefer to put some sort of term on it, but I definitely want to approve it.
Let me just ask you, Addie, so I understand, what would be the purpose of the term? And I really want to understand it.
Because of the nature of a food establishment with outdoor seating, that there is a potential for an impact on the community, on the noise, on the sound, on the smells, that you don't always have with other businesses. And I understand that these people are going to run it the same way. We have experience with them, and they're running it in a way that's works well for the community. I could always sell the space.
Put the condition in
Years from
and
now, someone else is going to turn it. The way we do things out here, we call it food establishment. It can be a completely different kind of fast food place that goes in there claiming that they don't need a special permit because they've got approved for special permit in that building.
But we
in that
haven't
space.
had that actually, but the special permit here wouldn't be for a food establishment, it would be for a deli.
delicatessen.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay,
just any
I've
food
just, I've
establishment.
seen some location, places where I've understood that I think that the kind of food establishment had changed. We don't have it defined well in the code, and we say it's a food establishment and it goes.
Okay, Doug, what were you saying? You made the motion. You're good. So, anybody else have thoughts about that?
I can tell you, we put the same conditions in that were on the other special permit. And maybe just to satisfy Meg a little bit over in there, they can have no outside music or entertainment. Put it in there.
Well,
They said-
I think Meg raised before the issues of noise on the outside, no music on the outside,
Right.
and the restriction that it has to close since their hours are till 5 PM. The
They're only
food
open
service
till
establishment
5,
can't go beyond their hours. So I think we can add those, but I think what Meg is asking for is a term on the special permit.
A
I think that,
delicatessen is far different than a fast food takeout.
Chair, I must say the application does state 5 AM to 6 PM, although
Okay.
the applicant did say
Yeah.
5.
So then it's 6 PM. I think she may have meant
Okay.
that, but so then make it 6 PM, whatever the application is. fine.
Right. No, I
Greta,
mean,
Did you want to say something? You
I
look like you
was gonna
started.
say, why not have a term? Let's ensure that there are no issues. There's really no downside for having a term. You know,
Except that it costs the applicant money and effort to come. So if you want,
Right.
Okay.
I mean, if you were gonna go with a
but
term, I would
we
go with a
wanna make
10-year
sure there's
term.
not an issue.
I would go with a 10-year term.
That's reasonable. It just gives us some space there if something wrong goes happen. And Betty Ann, if we're repeating the special permit, it specifically says delicatessen?
Yes.
Right, but now let me ask a question. We just did an application at Madison and special permit, no term. No term limit. I mean, why are we trying to put a term limit on the deli that's, if we're not gonna do it on Madison?
Because, as I said, you may not agree with me, but food establishments with outdoor eating space has a more of a potential for impacting the neighborhood in a negative way. These people are running it terrifically, but they could always sell it and it would not be run as well and as
The
peacefully.
same can happen with that swimming pool establishment.
I
It's
just, in
identical.
my mind, okay, in my mind, that there is a little bit less chance of that. I don't know what else you would do with the swimming pool establishment, but that's was where I see a distinction.
Oh, I could come up with lots of ways that a swimming pool establishment could have an impact on
Yes.
the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Make no mistake about it.
Okay, we have difference of opinion.
But I was willing to go with a long term, but I don't know what the other board members are willing to do. Greta, what are your thoughts on a long term? And Abby, what are your thoughts on a long term?
Yeah, I mean, I
Or
think
no
the
term.
time is,
I mean, or no term. So,
I mean, look, I think the timing's there, the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 5 a.m. to 6 p.m., sorry. And it's a delicatessen and I think that's pretty reasonable. I think I would go for either the 10-year term or no term, personally.
Greta?
Well, I would prefer a 5-year term, but I guess I would go with a 10-year term if that's the consensus.
Well, actually, I think three of us are looking at no term.
No? Well, I won't go with that. I won't vote for that.
Well, I guess we have a motion. Somebody needs to just make a motion with something in there with respect to a term or no term. And let's see
make
what
a
happens.
motion we grant.
I make a motion to approve the special permit with the same conditions in the past, but including no music or amplified sound outside in the seating area for a term of 10 years.
I second it.
Doug?
Okay.
What do you
No,
think?
I won't approve it with a 10-year term. I think we did Madison. No, no term. I think we have to do the same thing for the deli.
I mean, I see though Meg's point. It is different, especially because swim tank is so it's sectioned off, right? From
As a large
Right on the
parking lot.
corner.
yeah, so it's very different to me, at least.
It's right on the corner of Madison and Old White Plains Road. It runs between Madison and
No, I know. I mean, I've been there, but it's very
Right.
sectioned off. It's not going to bother neighbors.
Wait, are you talking
Yeah,
about the
right
swimming
next door
club
to
or are you
neighbor-
talking
it's right
about
next door to a
the
neighborhood.
Hillside Deli?
The swim
The
club.
Hillside Deli is,
They're both
No,
corner
and-
properties.
yeah, except the Madison is more, Madison is significantly closer to residential's.
Significantly closer. It's right there. Same
It
block.
is, it's in the middle of it.
Yeah, same block.
So, you
Across
know,
the
I
street
mean, you're willing to give that, and if that goes to a different type of swimming, okay, which could end up being worse than a fast food takeout place where Hillside Deli is, you know, I mean, I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'll abstain from voting. Take my no vote out. I'm going to abstain because I don't believe we should impose a restriction on something that we already allowed another application to go through.
I have to say that I don't, the more I think about it, the more I think we shouldn't have a term. We don't have
Right.
a policy of imposing terms on
Right.
special permit after the first, so I agree we shouldn't impose a term. Actually, I originally thought it might be okay to give a 10-year term, just to have a term, but I think that if we're giving a special permit with these hours, that there's very few uses that can be the same hours
Mhm.
that would cause a problem. If a
Right.
term. Because it was a different kind of food
Okay,
service.
so let's take a vote, and then if you want to make it, if we don't.
I understand that, so we're waiting for Abby. Abby is.
Abby's new
I'm like,
deciding vote.
I feel like Sandra Day O'Connor or something these days, man. Sorry, just kidding.
It'd be good to have a nice, reasonable Sandra Day O'Connor still in the,
Yes.
so.
So historically, we have not imposed term limits. Is that correct?
Only on uses specific uses that we've had issues with.
Okay, and this is.
We've had more than one, we have repeated with a term with some, but yes, it's when we had some doubts or questions or there were
Right.
issues that.
Some issues.
And this is a delicatessen, it's not a fast food.
Right.
And
All
the
right,
motion was made for a
I
10-year
will,
term.
I will go with the precedent and go for the no term.
But then, right now we have to vote on my motion, which is for the 10 years. So let's go through
Correct.
this and then somebody else can make a motion.
So I
I'm
vote
voting-
no.
Okay.
I
Abby,
vote no.
Abby,
No.
okay. Does somebody want to make a different motion?
I make a motion that we grant a special application with no term limit.
With the same conditions that are.
Yeah,
with
the same
with the
conditions.
restriction that it is only open till 6 PM with the
Yes.
outdoor use restrictions that we
Yes.
discussed, no music outside, no music outside.
Absolutely.
And with those hours, and this is for a delicatessen / grocery. I mean, that's what it is, because I don't.
Yes.
Okay. I vote yes.
We have a
We
second?
need a second, so you'll second it,
Oh,
Abby?
I'll second.
Okay, now you vote yes.
Sorry, it's way past my bedtime. I'm losing it.
Well,
I
this is the
vote,
last one. It's the second and then vote yes. Okay,
I vote second. Yeah.
Meg,
No,
Greta,
No.
Doug,
Yes.
and I vote yes, and Abby voted yes, so it's adopted. Okay, we have taken care of all the,
526?
yes, let's do Fayette really quickly. 25/8/2019 Agency Construction Corp. 526 and 530 Fayette Avenue. My thoughts are, there's nothing new. They just want to argue with the condition. And my biggest problem, of course, with that is it would set an enormous precedent for with nothing new.
Come here, baby girl.
I agree with
I assume you weren't talking to any of us, were you?
No, I'm talking to my dog. Little Lulu, see? Come here, Lulu. No, don't. She's on my lap.
Okay.
Go ahead, baby girl. Go up. Go ahead. Go.
So we're making a motion about this.
Well, I just wanted to discuss it. That's how I see this. So if you want to make the motion, go make the motion. It's fine.
Anybody need to speak about this? Do you want to make comments?
Well, that's why I was waiting. Does somebody want to say anything? I said my thoughts.
Nope.
All right, so go ahead. Meg, if you want to make the motion.
I'm not quite sure. So they had asked that we reopen the hearing, to reconsider what our resolution was, but we did reopen the hearing. So now we're voting on.
No.
whether-
That's not what they asked for. They
Okay.
were they were at the hearing. We
Right.
had a
They
hearing.
started a new one and they want us to take away the condition for the
Correct.
specialty for what we granted them. And so I'm making a motion that we don't take away the condition for.
So we
in our
deny
app-
the application.
We deny the applicant. We almost never just say deny the applicant. Okay, we deny the application.
I would say you deny the application on the basis of XYZ. I think you've explained it. But
Deny the application on the basis that we were provided no new information, conditions, issues that would change decided last month.
I think to add also that this was a condition imposed because we were concerned about the grant of the variance before. And when we granted the variance, we thought this condition was necessary to mitigate the impact of that variance. And that if we took away this condition, that concern would not be mitigated.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Someone want to second it? I'll second it. I'll second it. I second
Okay.
it. Okay, does anyone want to discuss anything about it?
Yes, we never discussed that restriction with the applicant during the application at all. So they were blindsided with restrictions of 75% usage of the property. That's my only comment. They never knew about it until they got the resolution.
But then we have the opportunity this evening for them to address it. So,
Yeah, the problem was Doug,
But
they didn't
they
have
had
the
an
reason.
opportunity to address it, and they did say it was a hardship, and didn't matter. You know what? There's a on the table. So we can vote on it.
right, well, we have a motion out there, right?
Yes, and it's
Yes,
Yes, the
seconded.
motion's out there. Well, let's see, does anyone else want to
Oh, you
say anything
second.
before we vote? No, so let's vote then. Abby,
We're voting yes to say deny, right?
yes is a denial.
Yes,
Okay, Abby,
Yes.
Meg,
yes.
Greta,
Yes,
Doug,
No, I'm
and
voting.
I
no
vote yes.
because-
This
Yeah,
motion,
voting
this
no because
application
we
is,
never afforded the application an opportunity during their presentation to realize that we were talking about a restriction to the use of their property.
but we did talk about that we could have denied the application completely. So
I
they're
understand that.
always aware that they're not going to get what they want.
No, I understand, but I believe that we had an obligation, if you were looking to restrict somebody's property usage, it should have been discussed with them and brought to their attention that that was a consideration during the application process, not blindside them with it as a condition that they were not part of or could not speak to because the application was closed. So
Got it.
I think that's food for thought for future applications. But I think the applicant here said they had a hardship, didn't explain why they had a hardship, didn't explain anything else. We have a hardship. And to me, you know, I don't know, that's not enough.
no, I don't know, but that's my position on it anyway.
Okay. So let's take a vote. We took the vote, right?
You did.
Everybody
Yes.
changed their, okay, so it is denied.
Correct.
And
I'm
now I
sorry.
think we need to adjourn the meeting.
Minutes, please.
I haven't read the minutes. If everyone else has read them and wants to go through them, but I will say that next meeting, we will absolutely do the minutes and we'll do them first,
All right.
or at least some of them. We'll do at least 2 minutes next meeting.
Okay.
Is that on the clock or 2 sets of minutes?
2 sets, Doug, 2 sets. And hopefully we can finish it in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so we're done here, right? We're
Right, so
making
we
a
need a
motion.
Motion?
Yeah,
I make a
to
motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Second?
I'm in
Okay.
favor.
yes,
Yes, yes.
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 Good night.
This
Aye.
is
Good night.
adjourned. Good
Night,
night, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.